Welcome to New Home Insights, the podcast from John Burns Research Consulting. I'm your host, Dean Worley. If you want to follow market trends, demographics, capital, new ideas, and endeavors that touch on housing, we're going to try to make sense of that every couple of weeks. Let's go. Hi, everyone. This is Dean Worley for the New Home Insights podcast. I am old enough to remember Taylor Woodrow Homes and Morrison Homes as separate things, totally different things. I walked their models 100 times. The two builders got hitched in 2007. Cheryl's going to correct me if I'm wrong. They got an infusion of capital by Oaktree in 2011 and then went public in 2013. Since then, now you do need to correct me here. Since then, they've grown into last year by sales, I believe the sixth largest builder in the nation. So big times, huge growth. But there was another momentous occasion back in 2007. That's when Taylor Morrison appointed Sheryl Palmer as their CEO and chairman, which she remains to this day. And Sheryl is with us today. How you doing?
Good. So let me just give you a couple little things, Dean, that just for the record, we're straight on. It was Oaktree and TPG. They actually acquired the company together. And then you're right. In 2007, I became the CEO. And in 2017, I became the chairman of the board.
Got it. Quite a ride, though. I mean, they really are. I mean, Taylor Morrison is not one of the biggest, but one of the best builders in the country. Now, we'll get into branding and how you guys think about that here in a bit. First of all, though, we're going to do some fun stuff. We're going to talk about the extreme home makeover stuff. You winning the most trusted builder for, I believe, the 10th year in a row, which is remarkable. And then we'll get into some more, the media stuff about branding and about how you look at yourself internally as an organization. And then maybe some hot topics like cost and labor, BTR, maybe even a little bit.
All that fun stuff.
If we have time, we'll do that. I don't want to overpromise to our listeners right now. First, though, why don't you start us off, Sheryl, with just a little tidbit about your kind of journey to today?
Oh, my goodness. If I were to give you the quick tidbit, home building wasn't something I had initially planned on. I went to school to be a special education teacher and never taught because I was working for McDonald's. And somewhere in my McDonald's transition of, going to market the golden arches in the sky, I ended up went to an advertising agency and Webb became my account. And that was my first, kind of look under the covers of what even home building was. Ultimately, I went in-house and in marketing and then sales management and then operational management when I went to Blackhawk in Northern California and built active adult communities. Then Pulte to run their active adult. And then in 2006, joined, to your point, Morrison Homes. Yeah. And it seemed like 5 minutes after I joined, I heard about these discussions to bring these two companies together. In 2007, we closed that, and 30 days later, I got asked to take over. So
that must have been a whirlwind. I mean, and you came from Morrison, which, tell me if I'm wrong, I think was the smaller builder of the two at the time, right?
It was. But if you recall, they both had a UK parent, and kind of in merger rules in the UK, the chairman of the board was Woodrow's chairman. The CEO was George Wimpy's CEO. And so they had to set that up. And then there was a Taylor Woodrow CEO at the time who got appointed into the role. But over time, fairly quickly, 30 to 60 days, that changed. And that's when I got asked to take over. So completely unexpected. I had retired from the business a year earlier for a bit. And now I was back in because I was bored. And oh my God, almost 20 years later.
That's amazing. I know it has been quite a ride now too, especially for, and I mean, you're one of the longer served CEOs in the business now. I bet you that's almost, does that surprise you? Do you ever think of, wow, really, am I?
Well, because of my private equity journey, it really does. Because, I hadn't never experienced private equity until the UK decided they needed to sell kind of divest of North America because we weren't as counter-cyclical as the UK had thought in what's called the street in the UK. They were getting they were getting punished for having North American holdings. If you think back to that 2005, 6, 7 time period, it was tough, right?
Yeah.
Very tough. And so they decided when they had to divest, and we ended up being sold to private equity. Now I'm kind of in this whole new world. I'm running a company, but now I'm reporting to 2 PE firms.
Yeah.
And so
And Wall Street, right?
And Wall Street came 2 years later. We took the company public in 2011. So yeah, I've had lots of bosses over the years here at Taylor Morrison.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit later about that Wall Street angle and how that impacts you. But first, again, I promised our listeners the fun stuff, and this is where I watched the 4-minute video on your guys online, and it was pretty amazing. So you guys went and had a show with Extreme Home Makeover Home Edition. I wanted to ask you, is that like a spinoff? Like SVU?
Yeah, it's the reboot.
It's a second.
It's the reboot from it's been run for like 15 years. Remember Ty Livingston?
Yes.
Was the guy, and he was synonymous with Extreme Home Makeover. And so when ABC decided to bring this back, and Ty was not going to be the host.
Okay.
And that's how we got involved, and I can share that with you. But we were already in a partnership with the Home Edit, Joanna and Clea, that are home organizers.
Okay.
And we had been in that relationship for almost a year. And we were talking to them. They were about to begin filming their next season because they had a Netflix show. And I think they had done 2 seasons. They're about to start filming season 3. And we're like, hey, let's do some of our models, or let's do something so we can be part of this TV show. And they're like, well, hold that thought. Uh-huh. And we'll be back to you really soon. And they called us like 2 weeks later, and they said, we've been asked to be the host of the reboot of Extreme Home Edition, Extreme Makeover Home Edition.
Yeah.
And we told them, if we're going to do it, we want Taylor Morrison. And so we agreed to do the pilot, which was in Austin, Texas. And we actually filmed that pilot in August of 23.
Wow.
Believe it or not. And it was amazing. It was amazing. Building the house was amazing. The family, that was the, it was an amazing family where she lost her husband to COVID. And we filmed this, and amazing opportunity, building the house in 90 hours. What was probably the most fruitful was the impact for our team coming together and our trades. It's like, yes, I'm worried about, are we going to get to sell houses and all the things, but God, I'd pay for that kind of team builder again. And then it took until March or April of 2024 before ABC decided to pick up the show.
You're in that limbo that all those pilots go through until it's a
oh my God, I've learned more about TV than I ever want to know. I ever thought I cared to know. And I used to be in advertising.
Yeah.
But so they finally came back to us and said, we're official. We've been picked up for 7 seasons. Will you do them all?
Oh my God. So you're going to be on every
season? 7 seasons, 7 episodes.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's unheard of. Okay. So 7 episodes, and you're going to, wait, you did all of them?
Well, we did all but one, which ran last week, and that was the only one that was a renovation. Oh. And this was so new for them because not only did they have new hosts, they had never done it where they literally went into a new community and built a new home. It was normally knocking down or renovating.
Honestly, that's what I thought when I saw that you guys were involved with that. My memory from the Ty Livingston show was that they renovated, not that they built ground up.
Right. And so it was a whole new concept. But after we kind of orchestrated it the way we did, and my team in Austin was off the charts amazing. ABC's like, you have to do the rest. We're like, okay, well, if we're going to do the rest, we actually need to understand a little bit more about, how does Taylor Morrison show up and what's the impact?
Yeah.
So we agreed to do these other ones. So we ended up doing the one in Austin, one in Houston, one in Tampa, one in Orlando, one in Phoenix, and those 5 have already run.
Okay.
Last week they did the SoCal renovation, which we were not part of.
Okay.
And then tonight and next week is a 2-part finale. And this is completely different than anything that they've ever done.
Oh.
It's we built Dean as part of our partnership with Waste Management. We had been building 2 houses a year at Banner MD Anderson Hospital on a piece of land that's right on their, literally football field from the hospital. And for cancer patients, once they've been out of the hospital, they still have to come back for like treatment every day for weeks and weeks. So we built these houses similar to a Ronald McDonald house.
Oh, okay.
And so we built 8 of those. And they're like, I'm like, maybe we could do something at Banner. So we ended up not doing 2 more houses, but we built a wellness center right next to these 8 houses. And for the patients that are staying in these houses to kind of come in together and get a support system. This is all steps from literally steps from the hospital front door. So that's these next 2 weeks. Get your Kleenex out. It focuses on the patients and the caregivers.
For our listeners, by the way, Sheryl and I are recording this on February 13th. So this will come up a little bit later than that. So, but hopefully you've already watched it. If not, watch it.
Watch it.
I watched the 4-minute plus video, and I'm not going to lie. You mentioned that you built the one in Houston for the Elrod family in 74 hours.
Yes.
And I'm a fairly cynical person, but I could see the emotional connection for your folks on that video, and that it was genuine. And I got fairly warmed in my heart, and that's not like me. I'm not going to lie. So tell us about, I guess, the emotional aspects of doing what you're doing with this.
Well, besides the fact that I feel like I've been on, network TV just bawling my eyes out every time I get in front of one of these families, I think if that doesn't tell you, and then I won't even comment about the Banner House, but you do connect with these families. Yeah. You just can't help it. You're there. You're helping them through a very difficult process. Every story is different. There's lost family members. There's fires where people lost everything. There's one where there's a child that had cancer. I mean, you're not human if you don't connect with these families. And then when you have this team that's coming together, and I'm telling you, it's not a TV thing. It was 90 hours, except in Houston for the Elrods. Yeah. And honestly, the fun behind that one is during the week that we were building the house, our VP of construction, who had been with us for probably 20 years, he turned 74. And the gift from the team, because he was running the project, and the gift from the team to Jim Black, most wonderful man, was we're going to build it in your years. And so that's why that house got built in 74 hours. And I mean, the trades that have known him for 20 years, our team, everyone, whatever it took. And we did it.
It was amazing. Honestly, watch that 4-minute plus video on the Taylor Morrison website if you can. You can see some of your folks getting a little bit teared up in those interviews. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, when Charlie cried on the commercial, I think that's what just brought everybody else to tears, because it just,
Yeah. I mean, just more generally speaking, homes are the most emotional thing people are ever going to possess, I guess, unless you're a 12-year-old man in a 55-year-old man's body, and then it's your car. But otherwise, it's your home. How does that make, just generally speaking, being a home builder? Do you think about that? Do you think about how this is emotionally the biggest thing in many people's lives?
Yes. And I think what's so important for, all of us, my leaders, company, is to never lose sight of that, and to keep, it's like here I'm sitting in my office, at the corporate office, but where do I get my joy? Going into the field and seeing what we do and building communities that we can go back to next year, 20 years from now. I got invited back to a community almost 20 years ago for a celebration, and it was an adult community. And even though our homeowners were, had oxygen in tow, the life that they had created together, this is what we do. We build communities that, memories. This is where we bring our children up. And when your kids are all older and you're sitting at the dining room table over the holidays, and these are the things you're talking about. And so it's so important and that we don't lose sight of, obviously, we're a public company. We have an obligation and responsibility to our shareholders to make money. But if you do the right things and the way we deliver these communities to a customer experience, that's like the legacy you want to leave and be part of doing really good in delivering these communities. But to your point, Dean, we introduced about 4 or 5 years ago, Love the Customer. And, the word love isn't often used in our industry. And we've now introduced Hug the Customer. Mm-hmm. And it's both external and internal because we can't lose sight of how big of a deal this is for people.
Yeah. It's that, I mean, would you be in any other industry? You've been in industries. Would you go anywhere else?
No, once you get in this industry, what do we say? It runs through your veins. It's in your blood. Yeah. It's not that you don't have a lot of hard days.
I know. It's surprising. I actually did not start. I didn't study to be, my PhD is in political science. I was going to be an academic. And, but I kind of fell into it. And honestly, I don't know if John knows this story. I said, I'll give it 6 weeks. I don't know much about this. And I'm,
here you are.
Something 7, whatever years later.
It's an amazing, it attracts a really special group of people, I think. You build relationships, but what we do for the economy is great. It's great. What we do for our business is great. What we do for families is spectacular.
It is. That's a great segue for the next 2. I want to talk about first about Most Trusted Homebuilder and then about branding, Taylor Morrison. So in terms of the trust part, as I teased at the beginning, you guys 10 years in a row that you've been named them. I mean, you're going up against some great builders. How have you done that?
Wow. Every year, like the last 2-3 years, particularly this year, because can you imagine going 9 years and then losing it? But it's really the conversation we just had, Dean. It's, first of all, I believe that I'm very fortunate that I think every CEO in our industry believes they have a very special group of people. I believe I have a very special group of people that have been together a very long time. And there's a true passion about what we do, and that culture matters. And it's not a soft, squishy word. It should never come across like we're soft and we're so nice, we can't make hard decisions. No, that's not it. We are nice, we are kind, and we treat people with respect. But that doesn't mean we don't make good, difficult business decisions, have hard discussions. It just means there's a right way and wrong way to treat people.
Yeah.
And to understand, and everyone taking on the responsibility of getting, what I say is like getting to know your story. Dean, I just found out that you had a political science background, caring about where people came from, what brought them here, finding those commonalities, being grounded on a vision of what we're trying to accomplish, and trusting each other. If you don't have that trust in the organization, mm-hmm. there's no way you can demonstrate it to your customers. There's just not. And I am just overwhelmed with what the team has accomplished in 10 years. It's not a survey you can trick. It's not something you can go wash windows and hope that then will give you a good survey. It's something that you have no idea. They're calling shoppers. It's the way people feel. And as proud as I am of Most Trusted, this year, literally within the same 2 weeks, we found out that we were number 12 on the Forbes Most Trusted list.
Oh, wow.
We were right behind Apple. I think we were the only builder in the top 25. There's the top 300 companies. And we are the highest builder, like I said, right behind Apple. And I'm like, okay, that means this is real, right? This had nothing to do with home building. This is just the way our people feel.
Do you instill that in, your main point people are going to be your sales agents at a given community. I mean, do you try consciously to train them to not be overly quote unquote salesy and try to have a connection with folks? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, hey, we have the same trap fences that everybody else has.
Yeah.
Right. We're trying to get sales.
Yeah.
Once again, there's a way. It's, what's the old sales saying? You have, 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them accordingly. It's true.
Yeah.
Take the time to understand. I mean, God, when I walk into like sales offices when you're shopping and like people don't even get behind, like the models are that way.
Yeah.
You're not building rapport. And I'm not saying anybody would do that, but just in case that were to happen, it's about building rapport. And if you can make a customer understand that you're here to help them find what's right for them, not to sell them a house.
Yeah.
So do we train that? Yes.
Yeah.
Do we talk about the importance of understanding your customer needs? Yes.
Yeah.
But it's real. And I really think if you start there, guess what? Your salespeople become more successful, make more money. It's a win-win.
Yeah. But Sheryl, you know this, that there are some folks out there who flip on reverse what you just said. It's more sales as kind of manipulation than it is sales as let's build a rapport, let's figure out what's best for you. There are folks who do that. We both know there are. And my guess is they'd be at the bottom of this most trusted list.
I think they are. And maybe that's not important for everybody. But when I think about, a description that I want our company known with, trusting each other and being trusted, I can sell a lot more houses that way.
So that's perfect segue for branding. So first I wanted to ask you, there's various sort of definitions and interpretation that are out there. But when I say brand, when people say brand, what do you think of as not the Taylor Morrison brand? Well, I'll ask you that in 1 second, but branding generally. What do you think branding is for companies? How do you define that?
I think it's very different industry by industry, Dean, coming from my background. And, when I first got into advertising years ago and I was at McDonald's, wow, I learned brand and what brand meant very differently. And I mean, you want to talk about some level of manipulation. And I say this in a complimentary way. We were marketing to children.
Yeah.
And if you could get children to believe and love and want, they'll get the parents there, right? I mean, the kids didn't have money, but that's what Ronald McDonald was all about. And so I think it very much depends on the industry, retail, consumer facing, the value of what brand really means. Okay. When I think about our industry, location matters. So I'm not naive enough to say that, God, people are going to seek us out and drive an extra 30 miles to work because they live in a Taylor Morrison house. As much as I want to believe that, I don't. What I really believe in the power of brand in our industry, and this is the example I use with our teams, is so much traffic today actually comes through the website. So when they're thinking about doing a home search and Taylor Morrison pops up along with some of our competitors, what have they heard about that name? Yeah. And does that make them click further? To me, that's the same today as what it's been for the last 30 years when people were just driving like submarkets because they had maybe decided where they wanted their kids to go. And they get to that stop sign and Taylor Morrison's sign turn left into our front gate and they see brand X on the right. Do they know enough about us? And what they know, is it good? Because sometimes just like a car, you don't notice a car until you're in the car market, right?
Yeah.
What they heard is good. Well, they make that left turn.
I see.
And that's kind of the same behavior we want to capture when they're Google searching new homes.
So you still have to have the right place. You still have to have the right price. But
those are tapes.
But within the competition of folks who have the right price, folks who have the right place, that brand is critical.
Yeah, and I think our industry and many industries, when things get tough, what do? We cut advertising. Yeah. Well, guess what? When things start picking up, people have forgotten about you.
Yeah. I remember Moxie Cola didn't advertise on, I think it was radio in the 20s. Coca-Cola did. Yeah, we know the story from then on. What is then the Taylor Morrison brand? Is it the most trusted home builder or is it something else?
It's the most trusted. And I think, we've gotten there in lots of different ways. And I think it's because the message that we give to our customers, we're going to meet you where you are. And that's if we're talking about producting, if it's talking about, obviously we have to have the location, as we just said. Yeah. But we're going to meet them where they are, and we're going to give them hopefully what they want. Now, we can't be all things to all people. So if that doesn't work, then we'll help them find something different, maybe in a different community. But just like our social platform, for the longest time, we were marketing about, life gives you lots of different twists and turns, and you might be going through becoming an empty nester or getting married or that first child. We're there, whatever life situation is, to be there for you. And then if I go to the virtual aspect, if you want to engage with us virtually, you want to make a reservation online, great.
Yeah.
Do that. Pull out your credit card. We'll take it and we'll reserve that house. If you want to do the contract fully virtually, great. We'll do that too. We'll take you all the way to the closing table. We probably recommend you come in and walk and see everything that, we have a lot more flexibility today because of, AI and the things that we can show online. But we want to build that relationship. But our number one conversion is people are going online and making an electronic appointment with us. And we're converting them quicker than any other vehicle.
Do you think you're maintaining that brand awareness and that the sense of your brand with things becoming more and more virtual? Is that going to be tougher to maintain that or easier?
No, not if you do it the right way. And it's what do you do with that information? If I can build trust. So let's say you come online, you spend a lot of time on a certain house in a certain community, and maybe it's a spec. I've learned a lot about you. Mm-hmm. So now I'm not going to just send you e-blast and bore you and send you stuff about, you were in Chandler looking at a house online. Now I'm going to send you stuff in Surprise. I'm probably not going to gain a lot of credibility. Mm-hmm. But next time, maybe that plan becomes available and there's a spec and I send you a personalized note because we have the intelligence to do that. People trust that I actually care about what was important to you. So there's ways to build the social relationship. There really is.
I just worry that, and maybe I'm just being too old school, but that you do run the risk of the more we rely on technology of having that disconnect, because there's nothing that beats actually being able to look someone in the eyes, and maybe no buyer needs that anymore at some point.
No, they do. I think what I'm trying to get across is every buyer needs something different.
Okay.
I agree with you. I'm old school too, and COVID. The way I felt so bad for our salespeople that were wearing masks and they were trying to connect and you couldn't see the smile.
Yeah.
That's how you build rapport, right? But some people, they're really happy doing their stuff at 10 o'clock at night. Yeah. I would tell you, I think this last quarter, Dean, we just reported yesterday, 37% of our reservations happened before they had ever come to a community. Now that statistic blows my mind because I wouldn't do that. I would buy a house first without seeing it. But some people want to.
I think the 10 o'clock thing you just mentioned too is another thing. I remember years ago saying, gosh, home builders should really think about their hours because people can't get there by 5 or 6 o'clock at night. Now that you have so much, you can do all these things online. You've effectively opened up your hours to 24 per day. And I think that's helped the industry as a whole tremendously.
It has, but nothing replaces. And I think I learned that early in my career at Webb. I was a young pup and I was a sales manager and all of our customers were 2.5 times older than me. And you had to build a relationship when you're this young, as they saw me, kid.
Yeah.
But you begin to realize the power in what those relationships do for a sales team.
So let's talk about you and you, inside Taylor Morrison, for lack of a better phrase. Let's start with you, Sheryl Palmer. Do you have sort of, a guidepost, a philosophy that you took into the job when you were named CEO and you've kept ever since then? What is sort of your, I don't know if philosophy is the right word, but do you have a sense of that as you?
Well, I think when I first got in the job, my philosophy was fake it till I make it because it was like, wow, am I really going to do this? Over the years you learn. I think my philosophy has really been as long as I can, and I think I got it from my dad. is surround yourself. I mean, really work hard to build relationships with people, and don't ever be scared to not have all the answers. Surround yourself with really, really good people. And if you can do that, there's not a whole lot you can't work through.
Yeah.
And so it's a very kind of people first mentality. We can't do what we do without top talent.
Yeah.
And I've seen so many times in my career, people try to surround themselves with people that will be yes people,
Yeah. Yeah.
will maybe not challenge them. That's horrible. That's just horrible. How do you ever continue to learn? I have this also insatiable curiosity. And so I get to learn from my team every single day. So I'd say principally that's probably been at the top, and then it's good collaboration. And then, you get, as you grow in your career, Dean, you don't necessarily get smarter the next day. You get access to more, access to more information, access to more people. And if you don't use that to your benefit to learn and develop, and then I think my other philosophy is you have to give that back, is let people go do their job.
Okay.
And, we're a big company. We don't have to there's things we have to manage. There's things there are guardrails for sure. But if you have the confidence in good talent, let them run. It's amazing what they'll do.
I'm going to come back to that, exactly what you just said. I'm going to come back to that in just a couple of minutes. First, I wanted to ask you, though, about Wall Street. You're a public builder. You've been a public builder now for over a decade. There's a lot of metrics that Wall Street's looking at. You have to go on those quarterly calls and say the right things. What impact does that have on you running the company? Is that a positive? Is it negative? Or just sort of something you need to do?
It's just our reality. I love telling our story. I always say to our team, I'm the lucky one. I get to go tell the story that you guys built, because I'm not out there building houses, right? Selling them, closing them. But I get to take all the good things that have been created here and go tell the story, which for me is a lot of fun. Is it different? I remember when we first went public, Dean, I think I traveled the country and it's not going to affect you. Well, that's not really true, because you do find yourself a little bit on that quarterly treadmill, and your credibility is the reason it affects you. Because if you go out there and say things that you can't deliver on, your credibility is compromised. It shows up in your share price, right?
Yeah. Theoretically, for some companies, no.
Yeah, that's fair. But I've always found it as an awesome responsibility that we take very seriously.
It does seem like builders are really held to a very high standard by Wall Street.
Amen.
It really does. I mean, it always seems like, God, they're doing great. And they seem like they want to poke holes in it, even though it's such an incredibly important part of the economy, and that performance is measured accurately. Well,
and you even look at how we're valued. It's a different standard than generally the entire marketplace.
I know. It's
a little frustrating, but whining doesn't help. We just have to go execute and make it happen.
Well, I'm glad you said it earlier about collaboration, about surrounding yourself with smart people, because I think a lot of leaders say that. The best leaders mean it. And for sure you mean it, and they don't all, let's be honest. And some of them don't even bother to say it. But so you're a public company. I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you. What is sort of the biggest advantage of being public versus private in home building right now?
I'd say there's a couple. One is the number one. For a long time, I thought it was the only one, is cost of capital.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I mean, when we were private, we were getting to a scale that we were being compared to the public companies. But at that time, I had private equity capital. It was way expensive. I mean, almost dangerously expensive, legally expensive in my mind. But it was our world, right? We were a controlled private equity company, and that's what the loans cost us. So being able to trade, double-digit debt for something that is more keen to the public markets, that's a huge. It impacts the land you can buy, how you underwrite land, obviously people. It impacts the company. The second I think is as you grow in the public environment and have that cover with a better cost of capital and just scale, it just gives you advantages. It gives you R&D advantages. We can spend a little bit more on making sure that we're working on things, just like this whole reservation system, right? We basically have done all of that ourselves, and it took a long time to get where we have it today and a fairly decent investment. That's harder, I think, in a private company.
Yeah.
So I'd say scale, cost of capital for sure. There's a long list. I think your people get a lot of confidence because of the visibility they have into your financials and the certainty they have in the company's confidence in the company's success and financial viability.
Is there a disadvantage, though, of being public versus being private?
Oh, yeah. The treadmill. I mean, you are held in our industry to a very high bar. I think that makes us sharper, better. So I'm not going to complain about it. But, you get to, I'll use COVID as an example, Dean. The supply chain was horrible, right? It was the most difficult time. We were all playing, double-fisted whack-a-mole, trying to get, fight fires. I mean, I remember a time seeing all these articles in the newspaper about literally houses, people living in houses without garage doors, plywood being, applied to let people move in, and we were just being mocked, the industry. But think about the choice these builders were faced with. We have people that need a place to live. They want their house. You told them that the garage doors were supposed to be here. They didn't get here. In fact, we just found out they're going to be another month. Customer wants a house. We told, so that's like where it starts. And then, by the way, you told the street you're going to deliver it. You want to do the right thing. And sometimes I think the teams feel like the pressure of those numbers, because stuff does happen. And it's like, but you still have to hold up, do the right thing. And what I always say to our teams is, you guys do the right thing. If it causes us to miss our numbers, we'll deal with that. Yeah. It's easier for me to say there's an amount of pride from our teams that they said they're going to do something, they want to deliver on that.
Yeah. I remember the fake garage doors with even some builders painted them to look like garages just to get that home seal so you can get that habitation and get that.
So you can get the CO, right? But those are the kinds of choices because, there's thousands of parts and pieces. It doesn't always go exactly as planned. But the pressure, the teams feel the pressure. They give us what they think they're going to do, and then they want to deliver on that. That makes it hard on them every day.
Home building is maybe not unique, but it is a aggregation of a lot of different kinds of businesses, sales and marketing and construction and warranty and maybe mortgages and things like that. How do you get all those things to work together? You must have systems in place. Are you really adhering to systems to make sure all those things work together?
Well, that's the advantage of scale, right? And hey, when we first came together, Taylor, Woodrow, and Morrison, I think we probably had 5 different playbooks because those private companies were run kind of like regions and not companies. So we had to do integrations within the companies to integrate them together. But as you grow, and it's a really tough balancing act, Dean. I always say the responsibility of the corporate team is to help to aid our field teams and put those synergies in place and those opportunities and playbooks where it doesn't sell you houses. I mean, the strategy of, what product, is needed, land acquisition, those are things that really need to happen locally. The way we book things in the P&L, do they need to make those decisions? No, that's not going to help them sell a house. So it's finding that balance. I don't want to do anything to impede our local team's ability, but I want to aid it by saying, here's our sales playbook. You don't open a community until the models are done, the entrance is done, okay? If not, everyone will go do their own thing.
Yeah.
So those are the ways. And then these are when we notify customers of a walkthrough. This is the touch points.
Okay.
So you can do those things to enhance the consumer and not have them do it locally, but stay out of the things that really are around strategy and enhancing the relationship with the customer.
That's interesting. So you're decentralized as much you can, but you do have this overarching ethos and playbook that they need to be mindful of.
Centralize the areas. Your puppies. Centralize the areas that, are task, our back office. I mean, what are the things that don't really add to their ability to direct strategy?
Okay, Sheryl, let's get to the hot takes portion of the show here. I wanted to talk about what you kind of alluded to just a second ago: cost, labor, supply. Where do you see cost? Are you concerned about lumber and other hard costs?
Yeah, I am. Who knows where this tariff thing goes? On the aluminum front, I'm as equally concerned about any production disruption as I am the tariff.
Okay.
For example, transformers is probably the one thing that I would tell you across the U.S. hasn't kind of been cured.
Yeah.
A lot more predictability. If you order it 10 months out, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
But I think there's only one company in the U.S. that actually builds transformers.
I hear transformers a lot when folks get
It's a big one.
Yeah.
And so aluminum's a big piece of that. So if this disrupts the supply chain, because a lot of that is from China, we're in trouble. So it's the dollars, but dollars are also associated with efficiency and delivery. So if I can't energize my communities, I'm in trouble. So yes,
China part is key. Though remember during COVID, it was other things like window latches and things like that. You found out those were almost all made in China. So it goes beyond just aluminum and steel, the stuff in the headline, or at least it could.
It does, and that's the uncertainty. We'll see how much of this is a negotiating platform, and how much of this is ultimately because on the other side, I do believe the administration has a keen understanding of the affordability challenges in our country today. And I'm not buying into the rhetoric that maybe 10 years from now, if we can be much more domestically based, I can buy into the story that saves money. I can't buy into it for the next 5 years when these plants don't even exist and this production capabilities don't exist in our country.
Yeah, the goal, at least the stated goal with those tariff policies is something that would just by logistics has to be very, very long term. And the short term,
right. So let's figure out how to get there. But how do we do it in not such a punitive way day one? Because the consumer cannot afford additional cost pressures, affordability pressures from where we are today.
And again, we're taping this in mid-February. And I'll be honest, my putting my political science hat on, my initial assumption was going in was that the administration kind of meant that. So there's some concern there. The tariffs, though, my assumption was that was more rhetoric than not. We don't know. It seems like it's popping up, though, so it's a little concerning. How about another hot take on age qualified? You have that Del Webb background. You have the Esplanade brand now. How critical is active adult age qualified to you folks?
I mean, it's huge. It's an amazing part of our portfolio. Our Esplanade brand, we are so proud of. It's honestly a differentiator for us. Not everybody is an active adult or resort lifestyle, age restricted. It has 10 different names.
Yeah.
We call it resort lifestyle because it's hard to execute on. It's not just a big subdivision. And so not everybody does it, but if you get it right, once again, going back to the rewards of what we do and building community where people can kind of have the final years of their journey and enjoy them in a way because they're with people like them and they have activities and it keeps their mind active. I mean, kind of mind, body, soul. It's awesome. And on the business side, they spend more money. They know what they want. They're willing to pay for what they want. It's a great part of the overall portfolio and honestly offsets some of the challenges going on today with the first-time buyer.
And your niche is a little bit more of the sort of the upscale retiree buyer, isn't it? Because you have usually you'll have a concierge or something like that in your clubhouse. You're a little bit more upscale AQ brand. Is that fair?
It's a really interesting question. We have Esplanades that I would call small, medium, and large.
Okay.
And I would say, high end and maybe a little bit more blue collar.
Okay.
But you don't have to spend a ton, Dean, but they all have that concierge.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought.
They all have an amenity. The scale of the amenity might be very different. The cost of those programs might be very different in a Naples, what they want versus, maybe a Houston.
Okay. I think a lot of folks are. You do see those little bit more price conscious, age qualified buyers sometimes get a little bit left behind from what's available. Especially, I'm in California, so I see that a lot here.
Yeah. No, I think you have to understand who your clientele is and make sure you don't overprice. But what they're seeking, the house is the last part of that decision. So I don't care what price point, if they want to buy a $300,000 house or a $900,000 house, what they're seeking is a place to be with people and that lifestyle and those friendships. It adds years. You don't have to buy an expensive house to do that.
Yeah, that social interaction.
Is everything.
They stay where they are. They age in place. I've always said that age qualified.
And that can be lonely.
Yeah.
That can be lonely. But if you can't help but get involved. And once again, in these communities, you can be as involved as you want or not. But it's interesting. The residents pull it out of you. So you think you're a single. Maybe you just became single. You lost your spouse for whatever reason. The support system is amazing in these communities.
Yeah. So really, I guess that's a great point. There's almost kind of community first, home second, in a sense.
Absolutely.
How about build to rent? You have a Yardly brand there. Is that going forward a pretty critical part of your business? Yeah,
our play is very different than the SFR play, Dean, with our kind of horizontal apartments. It's interesting when I look at the age cohorts that are really subscribing to Yardly, this is a rent for choice, not necessarily a rent for need. So I would tell you a part of this is, yes, it helps bridge some of the affordability challenges. And part of this is absolutely a lifestyle choice because same thing, we do create lifestyle in our Yardly communities. And we seem to be anchored on boomers and millennials. Huh. And so they both want flexibility for two different reasons at that stage of life. We also see a lot of single in our Yardly communities. The biggest amenity is the doggy door, and they have a backyard for that dog.
Yeah.
For that pet.
Yep.
Which, by the way, is the most important thing in our Esplanade communities too.
Really?
It's our laundry rooms have dog baths.
Pets. Yeah. So, I mean, pets to me is that even if it's a minority of your buyers, it is a yes or no calculation for those folks.
Absolutely.
If you don't have it, they're done.
So I'm excited. I mean, we know, that there's a lot of multifamily in progress.
Yeah.
We've really timed some of the timing of when but these are different. This is the person making a decision from being in an apartment to truly a horizontal single level house with amenities, not having to do the elevator thing, feeling like they have their own space. It's actually, we're seeing a premium to kind of type A, Class A apartments.
Huh. Because the product is so much superior, not just people above or below, not above or below you, but the space, the less densification, and the private outdoor space.
The gate, the privacy, the private outdoor space, the gathering space is the pool and the amenity.
Yeah.
It's all of it. It's the package, and we're expanding. We have 11 Yardlys in lease today. And is equal number that are in one stage or another of, horizontal to vertical construction.
Two more hot takes: land banking and mortgage rates. Land banking. What's your thoughts about land banking? For our listeners who don't know, that's real quick. It's just where I guess a public and a private builder, but a builder essentially has a second party buy the land for them and then sort of sells it back for them as needed with kind of that just-in-time mentality so they can keep it off their books. What's your take on land banking?
It's an important part of our toolbox. It's not the only tool in there. We didn't do land banking for a long, long time, to be honest. If I think back when rates were low and we could get into land banks with a single digit cost, it was very attractive and we went big. We pulled out a little bit, then we went back in. So it's opportunistic. I'll always prefer to get the seller to work with us and carry the land. We do JVs, we do takedowns. So we look at the asset, what's the best way to optimize this asset? And in some instances, a land bank makes perfectly good sense.
So land banking kind of took the industry, not by surprise, but it really blew up there a few years ago. Totally unfair question, Sheryl. I admit that. But is there another land banking on the near-term horizon, something that's going to surprise us that it becomes a really big part of the home building industry?
Well, I think we've all seen over the last week, a land banking REIT. I'm confident all eyes are on it. Once again, let's remember why they did it, or at least what it appears, and that is, when you think about returns, that is the greatest correlation association on what shareholders look for, right? Mm-hmm. And if you can get that land off your books and get it back just in time at a reasonable cost, if you can answer all those questions, yes, Dean, then absolutely.
Okay.
We've seen C Corps, we've now seen REITs, we've seen traditional land banks. So I think there's not just one way, but this has been a very interesting thing to watch. Yeah. And I do think, I don't think you've seen the end of land banking or what the intentions of land banking.
Yeah, I mean, I think you take so much out of I believe the denominator in that return equation that it's pretty magical on how much it can goose those returns.
It can have a but there's a cost. There's got to be a trade-off. And is the trade-off, if I'm juicing my returns by 500 basis points, but I'm losing 500 basis points in margin, I probably don't like that.
Okay. But
if I get a 2 to 3, kind of multiple on that, there's a lot of logic there.
I'm going to ask you the last question on mortgage rates and where you see those going. I just saw an article, I think it was Redfin had some data that they did a survey, I believe. 61% of the folks there said that they were not going to sell their home for at least 10 years. And one of the key reasons was mortgage rates. They were kind of the handcuffed mortgage rates. And our own New Home Trends Institute, we've done surveys on that as well and show that people's assessment of what a normal quote unquote mortgage rate is pretty far out of whack of what it really is. Do you see that just sort of gradually slipping away and folks acclimate to the new normal in mortgage rates? Or and will that be a pretty slow process?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I had not heard the 10 years, Dean.
Yeah, that was I just saw that article and that was the primary reason, but they said folks that they surveyed didn't plan on selling for at least 10 years, 61%. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I would probably frame it up as, number one, we are seeing a lot of people that are leaving their existing mortgage and buying. And I think that's part of, the preference of new today. The consumer's not full. They understand that builders have the capability to help them get to an interest rate that is manageable. I think there's this slice of consumers where life happens. Your house is too small, you're being transferred, your kid's school, whatever the reason. There's a lot of people that will have a need to move. There's a lot of people, or you just found out your insurance is getting so much higher because your house is 15 years and you need a new roof, and you're not sure you want to do that. So do I think you're going to get this huge, inventory in the market that everyone's going to say it's the right time to sell? I don't. I think it's going to be a gradual thing. I do think seasoning of a normal rate, what's normal? I mean, I'm old, so 6-7% by my being old standards is pretty dang good, right? I remember my first house, we all have those stories, in the mid-teens. But there's a lot of consumers, to your point, that don't. But kind of the new generations, they're managing more to a payment than a rate. So I think it does become a new norm, but I think it continues to give advantage new versus resale. One of the examples I gave yesterday is we have a program where we help people lock a below market rate, 1% below market, and that's costing us on a $400,000 loan, 15 or 16,000, but it's saving them about $65,000 in buying power. The resale seller isn't going to do that. I'm not going to take $65,000 off the price to get you the same payment for that same $400,000 house. So I think that's going to take a long time to resolve itself.
Yeah, I mean, the folks who it'll be gradual, but every year now we're going to have a few more people who their mortgage sense and their mortgage rate has reset, and that should increase demand, but in a gradual sense. So last question, I'm cheating, but do you see buy downs, because that's such a critical part of that, as being here for not here to stay forever, but for a good long while?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think rates are going to be a little higher for a little while.
Yeah.
So maybe they're just 1 or 2 year buy downs. Or are you talking about the forward commitments builders are doing? Are you talking about the consumer buy downs?
Really both, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I think yes, because right now it's the price and the rate and insurance and HOA. I mean, it's just life has become more expensive for consumers, and so it's harder. So I think we're going to continue to help customers, and they all need help in different ways. So it's not always a forward commitment. Sometimes it's help on closing costs. Sometimes it's design center. But I think for that first time buyer, there's kind of this black absolute line in the sand of what they can afford and what they can qualify for. And generally rate is what gets them there. And
I will say this is one thing that COVID showed it in spades, but you just mentioned about insurance, that kind of snuck up on a lot of people. The constant in this is that builders have shown themselves to be pretty amazingly adaptable to whatever hits them.
Yeah. I think COVID caught us that, like you said, in spades. I mean, who would have thought we were selling houses remotely? Who would have thought you couldn't connect with people? Who would have thought? All the things that happened.
Whatever the next thing is, I'll guarantee you guys figure it out.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Sheryl, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for this much time. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
This has been Dean Worley with the New Home Insights podcast. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks.